The Mystara project is proud to present Part 12 of the Lore of Mystara series. In this video we will look at the period from BC 1500 to BC 1251. Prior to BC 1500, the Nithian priests of Ra, known as Flamebearers, had managed to set up a state ruled by a pharaoh, who was a cleric of Ra and considered a lesser immortal. The pharaoh claimed all land he or any of his representatives viewed. By BC 1500, this state was referred to as the Nithian Empire. Under Nithian leadership, some Tralda clans from western Nithia migrated west beyond the Altan Tepe mountains to colonize new lands. They found Salonika. Some continue westward and populate the Strial Plain region. Others cross the Black Peak Mountains to the south to colonize the forested land thinly occupied by remnants of the Tamoran civilization. The Nithian lord Ki-Hamenthep leads some Tralda followers west across what is now the Shuttagal River, away from the main southerly migration. Ki-Hamenthep and his followers found the settlement of Luksek just south of what is now Lake Windrush, on the west bank of the Windrush River. The new immortal, Fla, created a race of peaceful, artistic, devout jackal-headed humanoids called Hutakans, in his own image, and placed them in the valley of Hutaka in the Black Peak Mountains. He started using Hutakans as his heralds and agents throughout the world. The Hutakans speak Nithian and their own tongue, which includes barks and yelps. They used the Nithian hieroglyphic writing system. Males and females are treated equally. The Hutakans are haughty to other sentient species, as they see themselves as representatives of Fla. In the Hollow World, the Elfatzian attained immortality in the sphere of entropy under his Azcan name Atzanteotl. His unremitting evil earned Thanatos' sponsorship. He began influencing the elven clans of the Lower Broken Lands to worship him as well as Outer and Hollow World Azcans. Atzanteotl influenced a group of shadow elves to try to go back to the surface. They took a wrong turn and ended up surfacing in the Hollow World. Unprepared for the red sun, they were poisoned by the radiation. A few made it back to the Lower Broken Lands, told their tale and then died. In the Hollow World Azcan Empire, only priest King Atruatzin and his most loyal followers stayed true to the immortals Kalaktatla and Atzanteotl by resisting Atzanteotl. Tanagoro sailed approximately 3,015 miles west, from the south-central forests of the Tangor Peninsula and founded a colony on an island in the far end ocean. With favorable currents and island hopping, the journey would have taken at least 84 days. Possibly under pressure from Simbasta Rakasta tribes, the xenophobic Androchian Netha tribe of the Eruption Basin migrated about 2,010 miles east across the savanna to the coast, a journey which took at least 7 months. Seeking an isolated place of their own, they set out on dugout canoes across the Strait of Sestia to the southern coast of a large island. The 335 miles across the southern strait took at least 10 days with favorable currents and winds, and stops at small islands. The Antalian culture of the northern reaches islands and lowlands has progressed to modest Bronze Age technology. Sophisticated Gnomish and Modrigsburg dwarven cultures coexist with primitive giant clans in the mountains of the northern reaches. The Hin migration fleet sailed north along the Devanian coast from the mouth of the Adachian Sound, before crossing the Serpent Strait to the south-central coast of Thanagir Island. They quickly set sail again for the Sea of Dread after witnessing the internal strife of the Tanagoro there. Sometime between BC 1500 and BC 700, Queen Nanayasharat reigned in Nithia. Upon her death, she was buried in a tomb northeast of the settlement of Sinsamen-Nu. Sometime between BC 1500 and AC 800, Atzanteotl offered power and protection to the Ocelotl Rakasta, who were under pressure from other Rakasta tribes. The Ocelotl discerned Atzanteotl's evil nature and rejected the offer. Offended, Atzanteotl cursed the Ocelotl to never form a great civilization by causing deadly epidemics to break out among them if they gather in communities of 30 or more. After learning of this curse, the Ocelotl split into family groups of less than 30, and quested to find a way to lift the curse. They migrated to the forests of Izonda and the southern Immortals' Arm. After the Ocelotls consistently resisted Atzanteotl's plots and schemes for centuries, Atzanteotl lost interest in corrupting them. Exhausted by conflict and encouraged by the stabilization of the landscape after the BC 1750 upheaval, The Tanagoro and Shialia elves of the Serpent Peninsula decide to coexist. Sometime between BC 1499 and BC 1263, the elves taught the Tanagoro non-destructive farming techniques in return for being taught various craft skills. In some communities, elves and humans lived side by side with some intermarriage. Tanagoran fishermen began to follow the Shialian immortal Kalitha Starbrow. The fishermen sought her help to calm the sea and grant good fishing. In BC 1494, followers of Atzanteotl deposed priest King Archwatzin of the Hollow World Azkans after a terrible plague kills almost two-thirds of the populace. Archwatzin and his loyal followers flee from Cheatli Khan north to the mountain fortress of Cornawak. Sometime between BC 1490 and BC 1015, the settlement of Krakatos is founded by the Tralda in the south-central lowlands. In BC 1485, Chibai Khan led his tribe to victory over the other tribes, becoming the second great Khan of the Ethengars. In BC 1484, the Hollow World Azkans led by their Tlaroni assault the fortress of Cornawak to destroy Archwatzin and his followers. The fortress is breached, overrun and destroyed. All who are not killed are taken to be later sacrificed to Atzanteotl. Archwatzin gathered his remaining followers and they entered a series of deep caverns and tunnels below the fortress. Priests of Atzanteotl cursed the land and sowed salt among the ruins. Sometime between BC 1484 and BC 1468, Archwatzin and his followers came to a great cavern system in their flight from the followers of Atzanteotl. They entered the court of the Azkan fairy queen Shochi Quetzal. The queen takes a romantic interest in Archwatzin and offers him and his followers eternal shelter and hospitality. They declined, so she showed them the way through the earth's crust. In BC 1468, the followers of Archwatzin reached a cavern under the broken lands where they founded Mictlan, meaning land of the dead. They marveled at their non-aging leader and thought him either blessed or cursed by the immortals. They started building a stone step pyramid temple dedicated to Atzanteotl. Upon the death of Chibai Khan in BC 1450, the Ethengarians started their second war of succession. Concerned over increasing humanoid activity in the Broken Lands, and prompted by the whisperings of Atzanteotl, the Porador, Felista, Celebril and Gelbalf clans went deeper into the caverns and discovered Mictlan, the great cavern with a stone step pyramid dedicated to Atzanteotl and occupied by Archwatzin and his Azkan devotees. The elves quickly overcame the Azkans and claimed the temple for themselves. Archwatzin alone escaped. Influenced by Atzanteotl, the subterranean elves began construction of the city of Ingmor around the temple on the ruins of Mictlan. They converted the temple from Atzanteotl to Atzanteotl. The elves turned away from their elven immortals, like Ordana, as they believed their immortals had abandoned them. In BC 1411, Amani was born in a village of Azkanoltek whalers on the Sea of Dread. In BC 1410, Archwatzin reached the surface and began wandering to find meaning to his life. He came across the degenerated descendants of the Azkanolteks, warring amongst each other to the south of Lake Amsarak. He was adopted by the Owl tribe. The Owl tribe taught him their tongue. Archwatzin adopted the name Atruagin and proved himself as a great warrior and wise thinker. He became chief of the Owl tribe and began uniting the surrounding tribes by teaching them peace, urging them to study and respect nature, and to develop a love for all things wild and untamed. In BC 1409, and within 20 months of his adoption by the Owl tribe, Chief Atruagin had united over a dozen tribes. Sometime between BC 1405 and BC 1397, the young Amani found she had a bond with the sea turtles her people hunted. She could move freely through them and even ride them. Seeing this, her tribe's shamani named her Turtle Rider. By BC 1400, the Tralda had regressed to a hunter-gatherer society sheltering in caves, having suffered harsh winters, animal attacks, disease, and loss of contact with Nithia. They lost materials and time required to forge metals, so they regressed to a pre-agrarian lifestyle, using wood, stone, and rough dugout canoes. Hutakan explorers discovered the Tralda. The Hutakans offered them protection, tools, and technology in exchange for slaves and labor. The Hutakans taught the Tralda to forge bronze and iron, to use the loom and pottery wheel, and agricultural techniques. They took some Tralda youths to their valley for more training, and as laborers. Worship of Fla became more prevalent than the worship of Ra by the Tralda under Hutakan priestly influence. Temples of Fla were erected throughout Tralda settlements. The Tralda were awed by the Hutakan's technology and philosophical wisdom. Luxek was now called Luxid by the Tralda. At this point, the Dengar dwarven population had reached 125,000. Citadels had been established in all known passes to Dengar, namely Karak Castle in Sardal Pass, Evkar Fort in Evkar Pass, and Fort Denwarf in Stridal Pass. Denwarf discovered a vast cavern network under Point Evrast which he named Dengar. He led his dwarfs to the cavern of Dengar where they settled and established their capital. Denwarf named his successor as King Evrast I, declared he would return to lead when he was most needed, then headed into the lower caverns and did not return. Part of Denwarf was resentful that he had to leave. The Evrast kings implemented policies to slow dwarven population growth. Atruagin united all the warring Azcanoltec tribes under his leadership. The people began to call themselves the children of Atruagin. Foreigners referred to them as the Atruagin clans. Sometime between BC 1400 and BC 1200, the central Tralda lands are ruled by Tarek the Bright. He wore the diadem of the sun, which when activated, immolated all living creatures within its light. He used this to destroy his foes when his power was challenged. This gave him some independence against the Hutakan overlords. Sometime between BC 1400 and BC 500, Mart was born in Nithia. She became a rare female warrior of her culture. The reputation of her beauty and courage grew. Mart became a paladin, probably of Isiris. She then undertook the path of the polymath in the sphere of matter, sponsored by Isiris. She was reincarnated as an elf, a blink dog and a thief whilst questing for the required artifacts. Prior to her solo quest, she financed the construction of a monolith of herself in all her 4 forms. Mart succeeded in attaining immortality and became the patroness of multi-talented characters. Sometime between BC 1400 and BC 1050, Hero King Lav founded a fishing village at the confluence of 3 rivers in the central Tralda lands. From here he ruled over his petty kingdom of Lav. Hero Kings Dendros and Irthu also ruled over large forest communities of the Tralda. In BC 1352, construction of the city of Ingmor was completed by the Porador, Felister, Celebril and Gelbauf elven clans. In BC 1336, the goblin Wogar was born in Erzud. Sometime between BC 1334 and BC 1319, Bagni Gullimore was born into the Grim Reaper's horde in Trollheim. In BC 1310, Chief Wogar dominated the humanoids at Erzud. He heard that the sacred blue knife was thought to be to the west. So the Wogar tribe of Homo monstrum brutalis ogres, red orcs, Goblinus occidensis and Canis minor numerous kobolds migrated from Erzud westward to a large lake called the Cradle, in the quest for the blue knife. In BC 1305, at the Cradle, Wogar's great shaman prophesied that the blue knife would be at the end of a trail where 4 tribes meet. Then his gree-gree fell in the water and drifted slowly south down the Yalu River. The tribe followed the gree-gree. Sometime between BC 1301 and BC 1289, Hosaduz was born in Hule. In BC 1300, the Hin flotilla made landfall at Ferdinal Cape, meaning Haven of Hope Cape, from which they settled the deep land. They constructed Ferdinal Keep on the Cape. The Hin started friendly relations with the Trudel Elven clan or gentle folk as they had come to be known. From them they learnt forest lore and magic, hence the elves were referred to as masters, meaning masters of the land. The Hin often brought the elves fish to feast upon, whilst the elves entertained them on a moonlit night with music and tales. The Tralda, to the east, raided the deep land over the next 3 centuries. Sometime between BC 1300 and BC 1200, ice sheets receded from the continent of Proto-Alphasia. Sometime between BC 1300 and BC 1010, the Yanife people of Norvold sailed east in outrigger canoes and began settling Proto-Alphasia, following the retreat of the ice sheets. One of their settlements was the village of Sunsval, on the banks of the Green Lake River in the continent's south-central region. The Yanife settlements warred upon each other with stone weapons. Sometime between BC 1300 and BC 500, Hin migrated to the Hardanger Ranges, near the gnomes. Perhaps the gnomes discovered the Hin's pipeweed that they liked to chew and invited them to their caverns. In BC 1299, Trollheim trolls took a wrong cavern turn and began wandering the Great Cave network for a century under Dengar, the Aucklands, the Windy Steppe, the Streel Plain, Lake Amsarac, the Highlands, and the Broken Lands. Bagni Gullymore ate an elephant. In BC 1296, after much hardship on their trek, and with no sign of the blue knife, the ogres accused the great shaman of a false prophecy and killed him. This precipitated the Battle of Kuzud on the Yalu River, which ended with the ogres fleeing southeastward with the great shaman's treasure. Other humanoids desert Wogar and settled in the Endworld Spine to the northwest. Between BC 1296 and BC 1290, more humanoids left Wogar's tribe. First off, a group including the Noonjar ogres and the Bogdashkan orcs broke away at the Yalu River near its mouth, and headed down the Immortal's Arm, settling in the peninsula's south. Then as the tribe moved toward the Savage Coast, orcs, trolls and ogres left to settle the Yazak Steppes, Dark Jungle and the Trident Isles. On the 24th of Thormont BC 1290, Atzanteotl, dissatisfied by the low birth rate of the elves and their aversion to sacrifices, caused a volcanic eruption in the Broken Lands which surrounded the city of Ingmar with lava. Many subterranean elves perished, but some survived through use of magic and began wandering deeper into the cave system in search of a new homeland. Most of their Shollow-Eats Queenclee lupins fled to the southeastern highlands, but some continued to follow the elven survivors. The elves and lupins abandoned worship of Atzanteotl. It is noted that lupins are thought to have first existed around BC 1000, when gnolls and Huttarkans bred. However, it is possible that some lupin breeds resulted from Huttarkan and other canine breeding after BC 1500. Los Guardiano Oltec high priests of Atzanteotl devised a plan to unify their savage coast cities and honor their immortal at the same time. Artisans and wizards of each city were charged with crafting parts of a ceremonial mannequin in the likeness of Atzanteotl that would defend Oltec lands from invasion. After many months, each city had completed its component artifact. Two of the pieces included the barrier mask and braces of forbiddance. However, before the pieces could be brought together and assembled, Wogar's tribe attacked and decimated the Los Guardianos Oltec civilization. Some pieces were destroyed by Oltec priests before the invaders arrived, others were hidden, whilst some were taken by the humanoids. Apart from a few clans north of the Great Escarpment, Wogar's tribe decimated the elves of the Savage Coast. Some scattered elves remained in the central and eastern sections of the Savage Coast. Hard-pressed by humanoid tribes, Rakasta and Lupin tribes relocate to the central Savage Coast. Sometime between BC 1290 and BC 900, a group of humanoids including the Noonjar ogres and the Bogdashkan orcs left the southern Immortal's Arm, crossed to Devania, ravaged Izonda, and then continued east through Izonda. Sometime between BC 1290 and BC 600, humanoid tribes of orcs and trolls migrate from Orcs Head Peninsula to the jungle hills of the central east coast of the Immortal's Arm, which become known as the Western Aucklands. In BC 1280, the ogres fleeing the Battle of Kuzud exited the Black Mountains and passed into the Sind Desert. They settled on the southeast edge of the Plain of Fire and learnt Urduk and Sindhi culture. Between BC 1274 and BC 1270, very little rainfall occurred in the Great Waste, creating a drought. In BC 1271, Wogar's tribe ravaged central Hule, slaughtering and capturing many people. One of the captives was Hosarduz. Bozdogan heard Hosadu's prayers and via a dream instructed him that only through deceit can the humanoids be defeated. One night Hosarduz overheard a goblin shaman talking about searching for the blue knife artifact in Hule. Hosarduz boldly strode into Wogar's tent with a magically levitating glowing sword over his hand as an omen of the Immortals. Hosarduz declared that the Immortals sent Wogar and his tribe to him because he knew that the blue knife was located beyond the Black Mountains and the Great Waste to the east. 2/3 of Wogar's tribe moved on to continue the search for the blue knife. The other third remained as followers of Hosarduz. By BC 1270, the great drought in the Sind Desert has dried up the ogres' wells. They headed east, devastating and enslaving Sindhi villages and absorbing the local culture. In BC 1269, after sustaining attacks from Sindhis and Urduks, the Ogres migrated from Sindh to the Broken Lands, founding Ogarmore in the southwest. They began raiding the Amsarak Hills and the Silver Sierras. In BC 1265, a Mani turtle rider travelled to meet Chief Atruagin to study under him. Atruagin and a Mani turtle rider, who was at least 146 years old but appeared much younger, became lovers, but did not marry, as Atruagin seemed to be blessed with eternal youth. In BC 1263, Wogar successfully fulfilled the path of the conqueror and became immortal in the sphere of matter through an unknown sponsor. Wogar's tribe, led by his son, continued on without him along the barren plain to the lands of the children of Atruagin. In BC 1262, Urduk explorers from Sindh led by Musafir stumbled upon Shani Kijiji, the ancient city of the Kari-Mari. At that moment the Kari-Mari were deliberating over a new leader after the death of their queen. There were two parties, traditional isolationists and progressive non-isolationists. Mufasir urged the Kari-Mari to open up to their neighbors, as they may one day need them for their own defense. Mufasir's arguments won the day and assisted the progressive Rahima from ascending as tamer of the Kari-Mari. This marked the end of the time of elephants and the beginning of the time of going forth for the Kari-Mari. In BC 1260, Atruagin decided to explore the world to discover the secret of his seemingly eternal youth. He relayed the words of Atruagin to his people and appointed chiefs for each clan, horse, bear, prototurtle, elk and prototiger, before departing. A Mani turtle rider was made chief of her clan, which from then on was called Turtle after her totem. Over the next centuries, Atruagin visited the highlands, the windy steppe, and the northern reaches. After BC 1000 he visited Alphatia. In BC 1259, the immortal Takati storm tamer agreed to help Atzanteotl to destroy the unity of the children of Atruagin. A union created by weaklings using diplomacy, instead of conquest. Atzanteotl promised Takati that his horse clan would not be enslaved in the upcoming war. In BC 1257, the children of Atruagin and Sindh were ransacked by Wogar's tribe, which featured goblin wolf riders. A Mani turtle rider, chief of the Turtle clan, was killed in battle. Wogar's tribe enslaved the children of Atruagin. Whilst there, Wogar's tribe learnt the use of feathers, war paints, scalping and light cavalry tactics. The Canis minor numerous kobolds and the Orcus rubeus vulgaris and Orcus simius terribilis red orcs thrived in Atruagin. The Sindhis, assisted by Urduk horsemen, drove out most of the red orcs from the Asanda Valley. Takati Stormtamer was outraged by the enslavement of his former people by Wogar's tribe and attacked Atzanteotl, but was almost destroyed. In 1255 BC, after taking firm control of the Atruagin lands, the Red Orcs captured the Sindhi settlement of Shajapur, near present-day Ser Ulan. Other settlements soon fell as well. In BC 1254, after the ransack of the Atruagin clans, Wogar's tribe headed east and split into three hordes, following the death of Wogar's great-grandson, who had no heirs. The first headed south to the coastal hill caves. The second headed east for the Kruth Mountains. The third, consisting of Red Orcs and Canis Minor Militaris Kobolds, headed north for Urzud, burning the human trading post of Arkoros, before entering the southern Broken Lands. Some Red Orcs stayed behind to rule the Atruagin. In BC 1253, the Orcish horde that split from Wogar's tribe in the previous year settled in the Kruth Mountains. It conducted raids into the Deepland to the south and the Tralda-descended lands to the north. The Red Orcs continued their conquest of Sindhi territory. However, the tide was turned by the unexpected arrival of Mufasir and his Urduk explorers with Kari-Mari warriors and 5 war elephants gifted by Queen Rahima. This concludes our look at the period from BC 1500 to BC 1251. An era where both the Nithian Empire and the entropic immortal Atzanteotl rose, and Wogar's tribe rampaged through southern Brun.